Good evening. So the Dhamma for tonight is about perversion. I don't have a better word, but it's an interesting word to talk about. It does the job. Because I'm not going to tell you what is perverse. I want to address the issue of seeing things as perverse. I don't really know the etymology of the word perversion, but I know how it's used, what it means basically, what it means to those who use it. It's used a lot by religious people. We have some idea of what's normal, and that which is not normal we call perverse. And of course it goes deeper than that. We have the idea of a divine order, a divine sort of normal. And what falls outside of that we call perverse. And that which we see as perverse is something one should feel guilty about, feel bad about, hate oneself, right? Loathe. This idea of love the sinner, hate the sin. Sins are evil, perverse. So I think we have to separate two things here. Something can be perverse, but for something, of course, to be perverse, there has to be something, some reason, some benchmark or measure stick by which we, some normal. How could we say that something's normal? We have to figure that out first before we can call something perverse, but then we could call something perverse. But on the other side is what it means to us when something is perverse. And so I think we generally tend to agree that, well, in Buddhism anyway, that hating yourself because of something that we might agree on as being perverse is actually perverse. It's very wrong and twisted. Perverse is like twisted, crooked, messed up. It's messed up to hate yourself because you're perverse, because you have perversion, because you're a pervert. We have this word pervert. It's usually related to sexual things. People call homosexuals perverts. Of course, a lot of people most people I think, call pedophiles perverts, perverse. Someone who is overly sexual, people might call them pervert. Sometimes we use it jokingly. But we see that hating ourselves or hating other people who are, according to some measure or other, perverted is not useful. So what this means for meditators, as a meditator, is that anything you might conceive of, believe to be, or even come to see clearly as being perverse in some way, should not then become a source of self-hatred or loathing or guilt. You should recognize that it's just messed up. I think messed up in the colloquial usage is a little more palatable here. But we're talking about something that is messed up, something that is skewed, something that is not quite right. In the Buddhist tradition, to sort of help clarify what exactly sorts of things we're talking about, we have three kinds of perversion based on three kinds of mental activity. And so the word for perversion, or that I'm translating here as perversion, is vipallasa. Vi, of course, means outside, or kind of could be like twisted or skewed. Vipallasa means some mental activity that is skewed. Sanya vipallasa, perversion of perception. Citta vipallasa, perversion of thought. And Ditti vipallasa, perversion of view. Perception, thought, and view, these are the three sorts of perversions. And what would it mean for perception? What's the quality of a perverse thought? So we're not dealing with what God thinks is perverse, or even what the Buddha thinks is perverse, or what some divine order says is perverse. Now, perversion in Buddhism is something that is, you could say, internally inconsistent. It's perverse because it just doesn't make sense. If I were to say, every day I push a boulder up a mountain, and then every night it falls back down to the bottom, and then every day I push it up again. Right, the myth of Sisyphus. It's a Greek myth, in Greek mythology. If I were to say to myself, that's valuable work, there's some benefit to that, right? That's the sort of perversion we're talking about, that we do all the time. Not so glaringly obvious, perhaps, but we engage in a lot of activity that doesn't end up bringing any benefit, and then we say it brings benefit. Well, that's messed up. That's perverse. And perverse isn't probably the right word, I just don't have a better one. It's certainly messed up. I think my use of the word perversion here is to clarify that in Buddhism, we don't look at things quite that way, in terms of feeling guilty or bad. We just see it as messed up, kind of deluded or delusional. So sanya vipallasa is some kind of perception. You experience something, and the way you filter it, the way you react to it is messed up. Citta vipallasa is you have some thoughts that arise about it, and those thoughts are messed up. And Ditti vipallasa is you have a view about it, a belief about something, and that's messed up. Okay, so those are the categories. I haven't yet got into what sorts of things are perverse, and we have 4 of them. So now we start to see what sorts of things are perverse in Buddhism and how we relate to, how we look at perversion. The first one is Subha Vipalasa, perversion of beauty. The second one is Sukha Vipalasa, perversion of happiness. Third is Nitya Vipalasa, perversion of permanence. And the fourth is Atta Vipalasa, perversion of self. So you see, this is where language actually gets us in a little bit of trouble, because we're basically going to say that beauty really is a perversion, right? You're a pervert if you think something is beautiful. So that's not quite right. The word perversion probably doesn't apply, but using the word allows us to see how Buddhism looks at things a little differently. Finding something beautiful is mixed up. It's a misperception. When you see something, your perception that that's beautiful is arbitrary. And not only arbitrary, but problematic. It's a very difficult one. I think here's where we get in a little bit of trouble with with mainstream audience. Can't really sugarcoat this, except to say that it's not that beauty is evil. It's that reality is something deeper than beauty. We have a lot of trouble in the beginning with enjoying experiences and relishing, appreciating. Trouble in the sense that it's hard to let go of, and there's a very strong misconception that somehow there's some value to physical beauty. I think you could argue that there is mental beauty, but that's, of course, it's not exactly beautiful, but we could say, and we do say, that like wisdom is beautiful and mindfulness is beautiful, love is beautiful. But to say that a flower is beautiful is a misperception. It's an extrapolation. Why is a flower beautiful and a pile of dog feces is not beautiful? Why is the human body beautiful, but a pig body is not beautiful in the same way, right? Really, where it gets fairly perverse, more intensely perverse, is when it comes to sexuality, of course. And it's perverse only in the Buddhist sense, not in a shameful, guilty sort of way. Why do we find the physical body attractive? Why do some of us find a certain physical body attractive, right? For the most part, male humans find female humans physically beautiful, attractive. For the most part, female humans find male humans physically attractive. Why? What we mean by mixed up is seeing something that isn't there and getting caught up in problematic states. Right? When you see something as beautiful, it's not just like seeing something as tall. Right? It's not like saying, well, the Eiffel Tower is tall. That's quite innocuous. You could say, well, that's seeing something that isn't there, but there's a problem with seeing the Eiffel Tower is beautiful, for example, or, well, that's a little bit abstract, but seeing a human body is beautiful. It's fairly intensely perverse because it really has nothing to do with the physical body at all. The physical body is actually quite putrid, smelly, leaking all the time. There's 9 holes in the body. But that's not the point. It's not the point of arguing whether the human body is ugly or beautiful. It's just pointing out the fact that it's just based on a very intense addiction, attachment that we build up lifetime after lifetime. There's no diamonds or rubies or gold. There's nothing that even we normally otherwise think of as beautiful. There's nothing objectively beautiful about the human body. Full of fat and pus and blood and so on. And so we perceive the human body as being beautiful. Take it as the best example, because it's very clear. Then we think of it. Many people hearing this are probably thinking to themselves, well, the human body is beautiful, and they'll have all these thoughts about it. So those thoughts arise. That's messed up. I say it's messed up. Of course, there's a disagreement. But then it becomes views. So you might say, well, yeah, that's your view and your belief. And you say, but I believe. And when you say, I believe, well, that's ditthi. I believe the human body is truly beautiful. I believe it was created in God's image. I believe it is divine. It is my temple. Many things people say about the body. So the teaching here is not to theorize. I'm theorizing with you, and I don't want to mislead you there. I'm laying this out because this is meant to be practical advice for meditators. Not for you to believe what I'm saying, but for you to be able to pinpoint what's going on in your mind. Subha Vipallasa, the first one, beauty. How do you see the way in which you misunderstand the body, the beauty? Mindfulness of the body. Right, we have these 4 satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. They say in the commentaries that the Buddha taught the 4 satipatthana in order to counter these 4 perversions, these 4 misunderstandings. So one of the things you're going to see, and one of the things that you should keep an eye out for, is how your observation and clarity about the body changes the way you look at the physical reality, changes how you look at things like beauty and so on. Whereas instead of thinking that there's some value to beauty, to whatever it is that you see as beautiful, to come to see that it's actually why beauty is in the eye of the beholder is because it's arbitrary, and it's based much more on our addictions to brain chemicals than to anything intrinsic in the object. When you focus on the body, you'll see really just how disgusting the body is. And it's not even so important that you see it's disgusting, but you will. And that kind of puts things in perspective, where you say, well, in what sense is this beautiful? I mean, in what sense is it disgusting? Really, it's neither nor, it's just experience. But we see we're out of whack. We see certain things as beautiful and certain other things as disgusting. And there's no rhyme and reason to it. We have no reason to think the body is objectively beautiful. I think you could make a fairly solid argument that pure gold is beautiful, or a diamond is beautiful. I think there's a better argument there. I mean, even still, you could break it down and say that's ridiculous. There's nothing beautiful about a diamond. But even us, even ordinary individuals who haven't practiced meditation, are just messed up in thinking that the body is somehow beautiful, because at the same time we're fastidious about cleaning the body, erasing any trace of the nature of the body, which is smelly and ugly and sticky and gooey and sickly and aging. You know, how hard we work to get rid of wrinkles and stains on our teeth and so on. The oils in our hair, the flakes of skin on our body, how we rub and scrape, and all the beauty products we use to cover up the body. Well, when you're mindful, one of the things you'll see, well, it's a great relief, really, the relief of being obsessed with the body, having to work so hard to possess the beauty of, well, the beauty of a romantic partner, or even your own physical beauty when you look in the mirror, or a beautiful sights like flowers or pictures, or beautiful sounds even. So that's the first perversion, or misperception. You know, what are we going to use? So first, vipallasa, messed up. And the second one, sukha vipallasa. Well, this is where we practice vedana. When we practice vedana nupassana, mindfulness of feelings. Sukha vipallasa is the misperception of, or the misconception of things as happiness. Happiness is a challenging word. I think beauty is challenging, but I think maybe happiness is even more challenging. What does happiness mean? What are we referring to when we say happiness? I think it's more clear to people who don't see so clearly. We might not be able to articulate what happiness is, but have a good idea of it. And many people will tell you they've experienced happiness from time to time. But you come to see through that in meditation. You see, wow, that's actually a little bit inaccurate. That those experiences were not actually anything very special. They're fraught with addiction, attachment, craving, clinging, and stress even. You start to see there's a lot of stress tied up in our seeking out of pleasure. It's ultimately pleasure. Sukha here, it's at least meant to point out the mistaking of pleasure for happiness. Because what do we mean when we say happiness? What do we mean? Do we mean these pleasant feelings that come and go? When you say to yourself, happy, happy, or calm, calm. Just like when you focus on the body, you start to see clearly it's just body. It's not beautiful or ugly or anything. Any attachment or clinging, craving for the body is gone. The same when you say pain, pain, or happy, happy, or calm, calm. When you're focused on the feelings, you lose any sense that one is better than the other. Of course, it takes time, but there's clearly a path there. You start to see how your mind differentiates less, is less pushed and pulled Right? It's not that you become a zombie, not at all. It's not that you become, like everything is just gray, not at all. Everything has colors, but they're just colors. They are what they are, rather than pushing and pulling you. What good is there in disliking unpleasant feelings? Is there a good in it? Maybe someone would think there is. Yes, because then you can avoid them, which is really a tautology. It's circular reasoning. What's wrong with it? And what's good about a pleasant feeling? Really hard to give any cogent or logical answer to that. What benefit is there to pleasure? A lot of our meditation practice is a relaxing. We don't like to talk too much about relaxing because we don't want you to cling to the feeling of being relaxed, but it really is what's going on. You're just not anymore, not pushing away the unpleasant feelings, not holding on, clinging to, or wishing for pleasant feelings, or neutral feelings, calm feelings. You just stop fussing. Why? Because you stop mistaking. You lose these misconceptions that somehow, oh, that pleasure is going, that's great, that's a great thing. There's something good there. And so you stop craving for it, clinging to it. You stop being disappointed and wishing for it when it's not there. There's less stress when it's not there or when you have to experience pain. You relax, you find what we might call true happiness and true peace. Again, they're just words, but you certainly feel more peaceful, more happy. Why? Because you've stopped misunderstanding. You've lost that perversion of perception. So when you perceive a feeling as pleasant, you say, I like this, I'm liking this feeling. And when you think, I like that feeling. Pleasant feelings are happiness. And if you believe that true happiness is in pleasure, you see these are the three levels. So you start to lose that. Mindfulness of feeling helps with that. The third vipallasa is nicca vipallasa. Permanence. Nicca means permanence. And the third satipatthana, cittanupassana, mindfulness of the mind, helps to see through this. And nicca is here mainly related to the idea of stability. That not only the things around us are continuous, but that our own self is continuous. The idea that there is a stability and a lasting nature to things outside of us and inside of us. This is important because on a very deep level, it's a part of what causes us to cling to things. You can't cling to something that arises and ceases, but it's much easier to cling to the conception of something like a possession, or a body, or the mind. When you focus on the mind, when you focus on your thoughts, you see that every experience is dependent on consciousness. When you watch the stomach rising, the stomach doesn't actually exist. We think of the stomach as always there. And when you say to yourself, rising, falling, you see that the rising comes and goes. When you focus on the mind, like when you say to yourself, thinking, this is where you start to really appreciate what that means, when to see, instead of seeing the stomach, seeing the rising and the falling. Because the mind is constantly changing. The only thing constant about it is the change. The idea of a soul, of a self, of some cohesion or continuity disappears when you see random thoughts coming out of nowhere. They're coming literally out of nowhere, not out of a soul or a self or a me or an I, but random thoughts and conflicting thoughts and arbitrary thoughts. Focusing on the mind allows you, when you say to yourself thinking and so on, and distracted and so on, it changes your perception of the real nature of things as being stable and permanent. It also provides you with a new framework, a flexible, adaptable state of interaction that we're not really accustomed to. We would much rather sink in, sit down. This is where we get lazy. We want to just cling to something. If I just hold on to this long enough, maybe I'll be happy. Well, everything changes around you and you just end up a stick in the mud, you get stuck. When you cultivate mindfulness, you become flexible. You keep up. You're able to keep up, to be in tune with the changes in life. They don't take you by surprise. Life changes, you're right there with it. You're familiar with change. You're not taken off guard by change. Because of how you see the mind. And this is why Cittanupassana is so caught up in this one. Because you start to see how reality is based on experience, it's based on the mind. The fourth vipallasa is atta vipallasa, perversion of self. And this refers more to possession, having something being me or mine. Mine is in a possession, or me is in a identifying with. Like when you feel pain and you identify that I'm in pain. When you try to control something, this is mine, right? Try to control your breathing, control your thoughts. Most glaringly, when we identify with our emotions. And so that the fourth one, of course, relates to Dhammanupassana, the only one left. And it's clear. You can see that clearly when you look at what's in the Dhammanupassana. The first is what we call the hindrances. And they're a good example of this because it relates to our emotions, our reactions. When we talk about our likes and our dislikes, we conceive of them, we perceive them as self, we think of them as self, we believe them to be self. This is my personality. This isn't arbitrary, it's who I am. I like apples, or I like oranges, or I like cats, or I like dogs. I'm this sort of person, I'm that sort of person. I think a lot. I have an anger problem. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I have phobia. It's nowhere more clear than in our emotions. In our likes and dislikes, our neuroses, and all of our mental states. There's a misperception. These things are not. It's not even so much about, again, it's not about theory. It's not about whether they are or are not. It's about how messed up it is to think like that. You're adding something in when you say it's me, it's mine. There's no place there for that. When anger arises, the best thing you can say about it is, the most clear thing, most useful thing you can say about it is that anger has arisen. It's anger, right? When you're afraid of something, there's nothing really better or nothing useful about saying anything more than, this is fear. Anything you add to it, most especially, and if you add self, me, mine, it's just going to cause you, at the very least, stress and confusion and delusion. The worst, it leads to great suffering and evil. It can lead you to do evil things when people attack you. I don't deserve this. Or I deserve this. And you find ways to manipulate others to get what you want based on your views and thoughts and perceptions. There's no room for conceit or arrogance in someone who doesn't believe in any of these things, who doesn't have any of these misperceptions. That's why they're misperceptions. That's why they're perverse, you could say. Why is it perverse to find something beautiful? Because it messes you up. It's not that God thinks it's bad, or I think it's bad, or people are going to point their finger at you. They might, but they might point their finger at you for things that are innocent as well. That's not the point. The point is it's messed up and it messes you up. Maybe in the opposite order, it's not even so important or so significant that it's messed up. Like if you believe that London is the capital of France, that's messed up, but it doesn't mess you up unless you take a flight to Paris. But what really messes you up, these are things that are perverse. It's perverse to believe in a self. It's a perverse to even think and even conceive of something as me and mine. Why? It messes you up. Causes stress and suffering. And you don't have to believe that, of course. This isn't about believing me or having some other view. But this is the sort of thing that you'll see when you practice mindfulness. So this kind of teaching is really just to clarify and help make sense of what you're seeing. Even through the meditation you've already done, you should be able to appreciate some of this. I mean, it should be clear, I guess. So at least some of this I can see. It's about helping you to direct your mind, because you're going to see these things and it might lead to doubt. Well, is there something wrong with the meditation? Why am I suddenly no longer finding things beautiful? Or why am I suddenly no longer looking for happiness? Or why can I no longer find myself, right? Doubts that you have. Is there a self? Isn't there a self? It's going to start making you doubt these things. Well, not because the doubting is good, but because the things you were sure of are shaken. We were sure that the body was beautiful, or so, sure that there was a self, maybe. Well, you're going to uproot anyway, any kind of, because even people who don't have views of self still have thoughts of self, conceits, arrogance, attachment, this is me, this is mine, worries about their physical body and so on. Of course, in Dhammanupassana there's much more than just the hindrances. It also has the 5 aggregates, the 6 senses. And if we just take the 6 senses, they're very important. Noting the 6 senses helps you to see this is the basis of reality, not this body, not me. I am not the basis of my reality. Experience is. Seeing is real, hearing is real, smelling is real. Cogito ergo sum. The only way you can say there's an I is because the existence comes from the experience, not the other way around. So some food for thought, a little bit of an outline in regards to the sort of things that you're going to start to see and start to question, and pointing out that it's right to question those things. You don't have to believe me, but I make claims. We could take it as a kind of a challenge. If I say to you, there is no, beauty is not of any value, well, you investigate and you tell me whether I'm right or not. You'll challenge, you can challenge that assumption, that claim. That pleasure is not real happiness. You don't have to believe me. You watch, pay attention to your feelings, your happy feelings, painful feelings. But when you start to see it, don't ignore it. It's very important. It changes something very valuable. When you start to see how chaotic the mind is, you feel like you have nothing to hold on to. There's no bottom. Don't ignore that. That's teaching you a new way to live. When you feel like nothing's under your control, there's no me, there's no mine, there's nothing. I don't even know who I am anymore. Don't worry about that. Don't feel like something's wrong. Something was wrong. Something was wrong, that these were wrong. Our views were wrong. Our thoughts were wrong. Our perceptions wrong. Not meaning we should feel guilty or feel like we're bad people. They were just wrong. They had no basis in fact. They were built on delusion, built on ignorance. That's what you'll see. You don't have to believe me. And if I'm wrong, you can leave whenever you want. It's the power of truth, right? You don't have to convince anyone or tell them to believe blindly. You make a claim, and if it's true, it's the most powerful thing in the world. Unassailable. That's what one translation of Dhamma is: truth or reality, and that's what we teach. That's what we try to teach, claim to teach, hope to teach. So that's the Dhamma for tonight. Thank you for listening.